Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo Story. Ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Samarkand for attending the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries, Indian and Chinese soldiers have disengaged from Patrol Point 15, that's Gogra Hot Spring area in eastern Ladakh. The announcement for the disengagement came on September 8th, and it's set to result in the creation of buffer zones, as happened in the previous disengagements by the two sides. Uh, but despite several rounds of disengagement since the standoff started, thousands of troops are still deployed along the line of actual control in Ladakh from both sides. To discuss this, we're joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Major General Ashok Kumar. We're also joined by Ambassador Dilip Sinha, who is a former diplomat, of course, and Ajai Shukla, a senior journalist. So let's get started with you, Ajay. Of course, Ajay was the one who extensively covered the skirmish at the line of actual control in Galwan and in other areas. Ajay, before going into the SCO summit and other aspects, uh, what is the sense on the ground? What is the situation on the ground? How significant is this latest round of disengagement?
Zafar, I think you make a very important point, which is what is the situation on the ground? We seem to be more concerned at certain sections of government about what image we can portray outside to the general public at large and out to people in other countries as well. Uh, we have, as a result of this sort of aim to gloss over a situation that is less than happy, we have been trying to sort of give out that nothing much has happened and whatever has happened can easily be resolved. As a result of which, 2 years down the line from when the incursions took place, we're still trying to resolve the issue. We have had two announcements before this that the situation at Hot Springs and Gogra have been resolved on two separate occasions, and both times it turned out that the Chinese were very clear they were not going to retreat beyond a point. They were not going to retreat from two specific locations, which was Depsang and Demchok. They would do a face-saving retreat for India from Hot Springs and Gogra. But even then, even with this face-saving to India, the fact is that the status quo ante of 2020 has not been resolved. Chinese troops are still sort of along the LAC, as you brought out, and the withdrawal that has taken place by approximately 1 kilometer, which still does not take us back to the status quo ante. So, I mean, if India wishes to have the impression of a settlement and resolve the situation for whatever it is worth in the present situation, then we are going about it the right way. But if we want to sort of make sure that the status quo ante is restored, then that has simply not happened so far.
Yes, and if the issue would have been resolved in the past, then why an announcement of a disengagement? That's quite contradictory. But Ambassador Dilip Sinha, what is your sense? Do you think it's just a tactical move by China before the SCO summit meet, just for the sake of atmospherics?
Yes, I think there are two factors I would think. One is what you mentioned, the SCO summit coming up. There must have been pressure from Russia that the China should ensure that India comes into the meeting with a slightly happy frame of mind. But I think in addition also is China's own calculation that as tensions heat up on its eastern front, on its Pacific front with both Taiwan and Japan, and there are indications that this is happening, it would not like India to be an ankle snapper behind. So it wants to ensure that India is kept relaxed and happy. I don't think they have resolved the matter, but certainly one or two gestures like this, they know will neutralize India considerably. They know that we are very keen to go to SCO and to show that it's a great
But
success.
has it neutralized India's concerns?
Well, it's difficult to say at the moment. On the one hand, the fact that our Prime Minister is going to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting at a time when there is obvious difficulty with China, and there is the international situation where the international tension is very high, and India has to maintain good relations with the West. Also, then our turning up at the SCO summit, uh, I think, sends a message across. But in addition to that, we have to keep in mind also that there is the opposite signal that we have sent by with our defense minister going to Mongolia, the first visit by our defense minister to Mongolia ever, and then to Japan for the 2+2 meeting, shows that we are keeping our cards, playing our cards close to our chest. We are trying to show that we are not entirely sold into China. Uh, but there is the message that's going out to, I think, to the West as well as to the country itself is not very clear. I don't think I'm clear in my mind which way the government is trying to lean, or is it still trying to show that the current policy of multi-alignment, that is trying to run with the hare and chase with the hound, is the best policy to follow at the moment.
So, of course, that's a question. But coming to you, Major General Ashok Kumar, what we know is that it could probably be a tactical move by China. But what is the long-term goal? That is still there. The situation on the ground has not changed much. Chinese are building infrastructure on their side of the LAC. There is massive deployment there. So the long-term plan is still intact.
Absolutely. In fact, if you see, even after 1962 war, there have been three occasions when there was, confrontation between us and China. That was in 1967 in Nathula Chola area, in 1987 in Samdurangchu area, and in 2017 in Doklam. Now,
Yes.
even these conflict situations were limited in times of duration for which they persisted, and also in terms of intensity. But the one which has come now in LAC in April and 20, it is a very very widespread. It has defied all the timelines. It has included six major areas. North bank of Pengongso, the Galwan Valley area, the Gogra, the Hot Spring, Dipsang Plains, and Dimchok. And of course, out of these six areas, four areas were not that critical. Of course, they were violating the agreed norms and the status quo as was existing in April May 2020. But the one at North Bank of Pengongso as well as Dipsang, both were very very serious. Finally, somehow, once we captured Kailas ranges on the southern bank of Pengongso, the good sense prevailed, and they agreed to, go back to so-called status quo. Now, this word is very, very important because the reversion of status quo is being articulated as if it has really happened in all these, settled areas, except Depsang and Demchok. But it is not so. What has happened that they have taken tactical move in all these four areas, have gone back but created a buffer zone, and majority of these buffer zones are on the Indian side of LAC or Indian claimed LAC. So in a way, even if temporarily it is our area which we are not able to get access to, so unless in the subsequent deliberations we are allowed to patrol to our areas as we were doing till April May 2020, the status quo in these areas also really doesn't get restored. And another
But
devastating thing which has happened is the serious degree of trust deficit between us and China, because it has defied all the mutual agreements which it has done from 1993 onwards, finally happening in 2005 2006. So even if there is a tactical disengagement, we are forced to keep our troops ready to respond to any situation again if it comes up.
It,
And
it's
in a way,
very unpredictable.
and
But Ajay, do you think that it can happen again? The patrolling to all those areas, which Indian side used to do in the past, and also, uh, do you think there could be more pullbacks from the Chinese side? They pulled back from Pangong, so which was tactical, and now they've again pulled back a bit from another zone. Do you think there would be more such pullbacks in other zones as well? And do you think that the Indian soldier can again go and patrol to those areas which it used to do previously?
Well, Zafar, that's a good question. And I think my sort of impression, which I get from having watched this crisis unfold, is that the Chinese have come in with a clear sort of idea of where they want to stay and where they will revert from,
Yeah,
where they will carry out their mutual withdrawals and where they will not carry out mutual withdrawals. I think that the places where they have withdrawn from, uh, which is from starting from the north, Galwan, Hot Springs, Gogra, the north bank of the Pangongso, south bank of Pangongso. These are the areas where they have given India everything that they're about to give. And now the message subliminally is being sent out that we're not giving you any more, frankly speaking. For India, the situation is we have nothing to trade with China at this point in time.
yeah,
All the areas where we could have gone back from, and that includes areas where we were at a great tactical advantage, like the south bank of the
yeah.
Pangongso, those we have given back, traded back with China. So what do we have now? You can only have a deal when there's something that you want and something that I want, and we
Yeah.
then trade it. So
So
I
it's more,
think
more, more, more or less an academic discussion because on the
yes.
ground the situation is entirely different.
Well, I think that the you would recall that the withdrawal from Hot Springs and Pangong and Gogra has been announced on two previous occasions after the 13th round of talks. Uh, None of it came to anything. So the Chinese are clearly holding that up as a message that we are giving you. This is even this we are giving you with a lot of trepidation, but don't expect any more. So I think that we are where we are going to be if we are willing to sort of fight for the return of our territory. And believe me, the Indian Army is absolutely capable of doing that. If it's not doing it, it's because it doesn't want to rake up a complete shindig. But the message is on all that you will get now, you have got. If you want any more, there will be fighting, there will be sort of a situation that may not suit you, and the outcome of which may turn out to be to your disadvantage.
So there may be no pullbacks from the other two sectors. But Ambassador Dilip Sinha, should India be now seeking a meeting with the Chinese side at the SEO summit, conference? Should actually, and what should India do if China comes with a proposal for a meeting, between the Chinese Premier and Prime Minister Modi?
Well, I don't think at the present moment we should seek a meeting. And if they seek a meeting, I think we should turn it down at the moment. Because there is no reason why we should go down and kowtow to the Chinese. Yes, we want good relations with Russia. And we know that Russia and China are very close allies at the moment. And perhaps if we want to have close relations with Russia, then Russia will try to enforce that we also go and patch up with China. But the fact is that China, for the first time in many, many years, is coming under pressure from the West because of its predatory and its aggressive behavior. And at this time, for us to send a different message to the world that we are patching up with China would be extremely wrong. We must keep up the pressure and join the other countries in putting pressure upon China to correct its behavior. If China feels that it can get away with by throwing a few sops, a few crumbs to India and get its neutrality, then that will send the wrong message to the international community at this moment. And I think we should stay firm. China has not given any indication at all, be it in the case of the disengagements on the line of actual control at the moment, or in the behavior towards the issues like the terrorists, for example, in the UN, where China continues to put pressure upon India by refusing to lift its veto on some indictments and sanctions in the UN. So I don't see any reason why we should not keep the larger global picture in mind and not go after these little things, little crumbs like withdrawal from PP-15 or PP-16 or wherever, and treat that as the ultimate signal of Chinese friendship.
Okay, but closing the channels of dialogue. Do you think that's the best option, Major General Ashok Kumar? Because ultimately, issues have to be resolved through dialogue. In
Not
the end,
really.
yeah,
With due respect to Mr. Sinha, I have totally a counter approach on this issue. because the now 2 points which are balanced. The Depsang has a history to this conflict and incursion. It had happened in 2013 also. That time, External Affairs Minister Salman Khurshid had to travel to China. They discussed it politically, and then that issue was resolved. And in lieu of that, India had to demolish its one of the structures in Chumar also. So there are issues because the issue on the LAC as prevailing is not purely military. It has got the attended connotations, and opening the communication channel does not mean that you are succumbing to the pressure or the impact of the your opponent or the adversary. The dialogue must be opened because it is only the dialogue alone, if at all, it can resolve the Dipsang issue. To my mind, Demchok issue is not that critical that can be really talked about and resolved. But Depsang being so strategically located to the entire advantage to India, China, whosoever is in the larger control of the Depsang plain, is very very important. And unless a political dialogue takes place, that issue will never get resolved.
So, Ajay, is the Indian messaging very clear, or there is a confusion there? Because Foreign Minister Jai Shankar has on several occasions said that unilateral actions of China are not acceptable, and this will impact the overall Indo-China relations. But uh, on the other hand, now there is this meeting taking place, and we don't know what will happen. Will the two sides meet? And is there some sort of a lack of clarity from the Indian side? In the past, we have seen statements even from the Prime Minister that nobody entered into our territory and nothing has happened. So there lack of clarity.
There is a complete lack of coherence and clarity in the Indian government's position. I sort of find myself sort of regretting having to say this, but we found on the day when the Prime Minister briefed an all party meeting of this country, that was in June 2020, soon after the Galwan incident had happened.
Yeah.
We found the Prime Minister taking the same position as the Chinese. He was saying, "Na koi aaya hai, na koi ghusa hai hamare ghar ke." If that is the case, if that is the Indian position, then what are we talking about? Why do we need to talk to the Chinese? The Chinese are, after all, saying exactly the same thing on their part. I find myself persuaded, though, by Ambassador Sinha's statement that we will sort of at some stage you will have to talk to the Chinese, and at the same time there will have to be a nuance to that talk, because when the West, after so many years of sort of tolerating the Chinese, finding reasons to make excuses in their own mind about Chinese aggression and behavior, the West is now finally coming down on the side firmly against China. And if at this point we, which is the only country in the world that is actually militarily confronting China at this point in time, the rest of them are only talking. If we sort of pull back and display a sense of a lack of resolve, if I may call it, that will sort of work to China's advantage. So
But but
while it
but
is
merely going to the dialogue, does it mean a lack of resolve? Isn't it an opportunity to put across your point firmly at the top level?
No, but we have been going to the dialogue for, we've had 16 rounds of senior officers dialogue. We've
Yeah.
had foreign ministers talking to each other. We've had summit meetings between the two top leaders. We have not been lacking in dialogue or in channels for which to resolve issues. What we have been lacking in is the Chinese wish to resolve an issue. The Chinese, on the other hand, are taking the position that we're absolutely clear that we are not in occupation of your territory. There's nothing to talk about. So I think that given this hardline position on the part of the Chinese, India cannot appear to be soft. There is no scope for any further give on the Indian side. It's got to be a process of give and take.
Absolutely. But Ambassador Dilip Sinha, you said that even if the Chinese come and seek a meeting with the Indian side, India should not accept that. But I ask the same question to you. Why shouldn't India accept that? Shouldn't India take that as an opportunity to tell the Chinese at the top level that, look, this is the situation on the ground. If you don't change it, nothing is going to move forward. Because in the end, some sort of a dialogue process will happen. But isn't it, couldn't India turn it around and take it as an opportunity?
Well, it is wrong to say that dialogue is not taking place. Dialogue is taking place. Our military commanders are meeting, and I think they met just a few weeks back.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it is not as if we are not in touch with the Chinese. We're not talking to them about disengagement. We are talking to them. Now, leaders, heads of governments meet only when the time is right for them to meet. They don't
yeah,
meet just for the sake of continuing a dialogue, especially when the dialogue has been broken by the Chinese, who have violated all the agreements, all the codes of conduct that were agreed upon by the militaries of the two countries over the last 3 decades. And one of them was that neither country would increase the troop presence on the LAC. And China has moved two full divisions of 50, 60,000 troops across the line of control. There has been no threat from India to China on this. And yet China has chosen to do that. So China must first show its bona fide by withdrawing these forces, and that can be done through the military level talks that are taking place currently. It is only after that that they should meet, if at all they feel that the atmosphere now is congenial. I don't think at the present moment, especially when our prime minister is going across to the SCO. The SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is China's organization to dominate the world. It is China's new international order that it's trying to create. And the very fact that we joined it was itself, I think, to my mind, a mistake. But that is beside the point. Now that we are going to Samarkand and meeting there, our relations, we are going there primarily for our relations with Central Asia and with Russia, not to meet China. I think we should avoid a head of government meeting with the Chinese.
but what is your sense? Do you think that some sort of a preparation must have been done uh, at different levels before possibility of a meeting between the Indian side and the Chinese side there at Samarkand, or not much preparation would have been done, or you know it will happen as it will happen there?
Well, some preparation would definitely have been done, and this Chinese withdrawal from or announcement of withdrawal from PP-15 is clearly a sop that China is giving to soften Indian public opinion. People like me and Ajai Shukla, for example, who feel that we should not at this point succumb to Chinese temptations. Uh, People like us can be softened by the point by saying that look, China is agreeing to withdraw from PP-15, so now let's start talking. But it is a larger picture. We have already withdrawn from the best position that we had occupied, the Kailash Heights, and now we are just sitting waiting for China to withdraw. So China must withdraw from all these positions, go back to the position as it was before the current round of tension started, which China has started, and then only should our Prime Minister agree to meet the Chinese Prime Minister.
Major General Ashok Kumar, I wonder, it's taken 16 rounds of talks between the core commanders. Finally, this disengagement happened. This is more than a year, perhaps more than a year before the previous disengagement took place on some other sector. Why does it take so long? What are they talking on the ground? What is your assessment?
I mean, what I'm going to say now is, predominantly my gut feeling. Because as I highlighted earlier, the disengagement from Desong and Dimchok are relatively complex as compared to other areas. There was a criticism of the Indian stance also, that once we were in an advantageous position on Kailash ranges, why did we not, demand the disengagement from all the points in one go, and let go our advantage, from that point. So therefore, once we resolve this northern bank of Pengongso from the Chinese side, this Gogra, and now the hot spring, the Galwan Valley, and the hot spring was balanced. We wanted that hot spring should also get resolved with the Dipsan and Dimchok also, but
Hmm.
that was something alluding. In fact, there were informal inputs in the 15th round of Corps Commander Conference that the hot spring issue is going to get announced after the meeting, because there was nothing too much really complex in that issue. And what has happened now, nothing big has happened which wouldn't have happened then. It didn't happen then. It came to 16th round. It was given as if it will happen 100%. Again, that didn't happen. Thereafter, Mr. Wangi landed from Pakistan suddenly to New Delhi. it was hoped that it will be publicly announced by him and India that the hot spring withdrawal is going to take place, but they were wanting that that withdrawal should thereafter not get linked to the Depsang and Demchok actions, which India registered that, unless the entire thing is resolved, they are not going to move ahead. And now after that, everything, remaining quiet, all of a sudden on 8th September, out of the blue, this announcement comes. It means there have been, back channel communication between both the governments, whether it is related only to the SCO or number of other factors geopolitically, that is matter of conjecture, one can relate to. However, it has happened, and it is in the line of whatever the previous disagreement has happened, that is the buffer zone getting created, we losing our patrolling rights,
and
the
and
way
and those
withdrawing.
buffer zone getting created in those areas which India feels are the Indian territory, not on the Chinese
Absolutely,
territory.
absolutely. And
Last last word.
absolutely.
Yeah. Last word to you, Ajay. How do you see the situation unfolding from here on?
I think, starting from a soft stance, which the Indian government took at the first, in the first days after the incursions were detected, from that soft stance, we have moved probably because the government has sensed that the public does not sort of take kindly to this kind of behavior by the Chinese. They have moved to a tougher stance, to a clear demand that we must have status quo ante restored. And then India will be willing to resume sort of the process of normalcy with China. That has to be continued by the government. And I think that it probably will be. The government, having made a mistake once, is not going to sort of revert to a softer stance now. It would just look too bad for the government to do that. So I think, we will probably see a continuation of the tussle over these two areas, Depsang and Demchok. We could see the opening of a couple of other fronts in the Eastern Front, though that is far from certain right now. But that is my sense right now. It's going to be
Well,
a
well,
certain.
that's a very interesting analysis that there could be opening of more fronts. But clearly, as you say, the tussle will continue for some time, and it will be interesting to watch how both sides will actually, uh, you know, uh, deal with the situation at the SCO summit. If India seeks a meeting, and if China seeks a meeting, how will Indian response is going to be like? But that brings us to the end of our show. Thanks to all of our panelists for joining us today. That's all we have in today's show. Thanks so much.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust